Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a Scrap Mechanic Q&A review, I guess. I normally do dev blog reviews, but this is similar, but not quite the same as a dev blog. I mean, there's a lot of information that is given to us, just like a dev blog, but I guess there's just no pictures to come with it because it's just Q&A style. So I didn't actually plan on making this video, which is why it's a little bit late, but I kept seeing some comments asking when is the Q&A review coming out, so I guess why not? I'm just gonna add it as an extra bonus video. Doesn't even replace a normal video. So this video, I'm just gonna go through the Q&A and add my opinions or reactions or thoughts on however the developers decided to answer the questions. All right, so let's just get right into it. And they started this thing off with probably the most important question, which is, when is the next chapter update coming? This is a question that I've wanted to know because I've been holding off on survival until the next chapter update. So this is gonna give me the information I need to know when I can start doing a brand new survival world. So their honest answer is that they don't know yet. The next chapter is a big, ambitious update with a lot of new locations, bots, interactive parts to craft, and new game mechanics. We don't want to commit to a release date just yet. We'll make sure the update's really fun and that it offers a lot of hours of playtime before we release it. It could be later this year or next year, but we're working on it as fast as we can without cutting back on quality. A rough guess would be that we're 50% done. We will keep making dev blogs to keep you updated on our progress. So this, I gotta be honest, the timeline's a lot further out than I was expecting, which means that I am now considering starting another survival series just to hold us over in the meantime. So I'd actually be curious if you guys have any ideas on how that should go to keep it fresh and different from the previous survival series. Let me know down in the comments below. The reason why I don't want to continue from my previous one is just because the frame rate's just not that great in that world. I built too much, I've done too many things. So if you've been wanting me to do something different with survival, let me know down in the comments below. And it's something that I'm gonna consider, but I'm not gonna give 100% guarantee that I'll go through with it yet. It also depends on if it even will do well. But as far as this answer goes, I think it's smart for the developers to not commit to a specific date if they are not in a stage where they're confident they can meet that. Because there's only one thing worse than not knowing when an update is gonna come out, and that is expecting it to come out and then having it get delayed over and over and over again. So I think they're playing it smart by giving a non-specific answer. I just would hope that they can get it done sooner than later, as anybody else should, but I'm patient, so whatever it takes to get a quality update out. Will the next chapter bring an end goal? The next chapter will, for the first time, introduce a lot more story elements to survival. That's not really answering the question. The end of chapter will definitely answer a lot of questions, so yes, there is an end goal. This is a weirdly worded answer that I feel like it just kind of leaves me a little bit more confused. It seems like the answer is saying that a lot of the story and backstory of the survival world will be answered and revealed, but they don't specifically state that it's leading towards anything like any big finale or anything like that. But they do just say, yes, there's an end goal, but the sentences leading up to that seem to be going in a different direction. So that one's a little bit confusing to me. How many chapters are you planning on releasing? And is there going to be a Scrap Mechanic 2? We don't think there will be a Scrap Mechanic 2. I think that's a smart move. Scrap Mechanic itself is kind of like an endless game. If you were gonna make a Scrap Mechanic 2, it would feel like, why wouldn't you just add it to Scrap Mechanic? Like either an expansion or like bonus content or DLC, like that just makes more sense than a completely new game. So their reasoning is mainly because there's still so much we can add to Scrap Mechanic now when it comes to chapters. As long as a lot of players are playing Scrap Mechanic, we will keep adding to it. All right, so this one, I'm gonna kind of pick and choose what I think are important questions to talk about and less important questions to talk about, but this is an important question, but I think the answer has just been run into the ground pretty much since the beginning of Scrap Mechanic. Why is it lagging sometimes? Are you planning on fixing the lag when two large creations touch? So basically, to sum this answer up, there's a lot of physics and complexity happening in Scrap Mechanic, and it's not an easy job to just not make a complicated game lag. I don't think it's reasonable to expect a game, whether it's Scrap Mechanic or any other game, to have really complex physical mechanical objects that everything is a programmable and collidable moving part, and have them all collide and collision detect against each other and expect that you're gonna get smooth performance on everyone's system. If you want big colliding objects, you're gonna have to take away some functionality, and if you want functionality, you're gonna have to deal with some lag when it all jumbles together. When are you gonna make the size of creative mode map the same as the survival one? This is something that we can do, we just have to make it happen. It's not been a priority, but we've gotten a lot of requests, so we might have to find some time. That'll be really nice. Having a creative mode map the size of the survival one, if it's actually the same size, that is going to be a massive difference to building flying vehicles in creative. In the future, will there be a weather system? Storm, rain, waves on sea, etc.? Yes, we're actually planning on adding a new cloud system and weather system with survival update. Unfortunately, we never got time to include it. It's very much possible that weather will be included in the next chapter since we already started doing some work on it. So that's something I'm looking forward to. I'm wondering how detailed the weather system will be on how it affects things. Like, is rainy gonna affect the friction of stuff? Is lightning and storms going to have the potential to start fires and destroy some of your base? Oh man, imagine if that was actually a thing, but they gave you like a lightning rod object where you could redirect you could like protect your base from lightning by redirecting it onto a conductive part of your base that wouldn't get like destroyed or light on fire. That'd be really awesome. Will you improve the multiplayer more? It's very poor in performance at times. Oh boy, do I know it. I live this question right here. With the amount of multiplayer stuff I do in Scrap Mechanic, oh man. So I like their answer because they say, yes, absolutely. We are aware of multiplayer issues and we're working on improvements. So I'm glad this is something that they already know. They at least acknowledge that there's issues and that they're working on it. So hopefully sooner than later though, because sometimes our multiplayer recordings, there's just roadblocks that we just don't expect. Well, I mean, now we do expect it because it's happened so much, but it's not always easy to plan for it. Now, this is an interesting question. Do you think the suspension glitch will ever be patched or add a different type of suspension that will not have the glitched effect? I'd like to be able to make complicated suspension mechanisms without having to worry about my creation flying away. This is a tough question because the suspension glitch is so useful unless you really want a realistic suspension effect, in which case it's just annoying. So their answer is most likely not, as it's an issue with the physics engine. However, we did add new steering settings to the level 5 driver's seat with survival, where if you press E on bearings connected to it, you can change the steering radius. Here you can tweak and see if you can find a sweet spot where the glitch is not triggered. Maybe that could help a little. So I'm not completely happy with this answer. I am happy that they're not removing the suspension glitch, but I really wish that they would just add a new part that would have a normal suspension effect so that we could avoid having unintentional suspension glitches. Can we get bigger wheels, please? We have diameter 3 and 5, and a 7 would be very nice too. When wheels get too large, they tend to wiggle around sometimes. However, we plan to add more wheels with different properties in general. We want to expand the wheel selection more in Scrap Mechanic. I didn't expect this answer. They seem to kind of dismiss it, saying that bigger wheels tend to wiggle around too much. However, they gave us the Crazy Wheels update when the mod support first came out, and it has the massive monster truck wheel, which, yes, it causes the bearings to freak out, and it's really, really difficult to get a stable wheel using a big wheel like that, but they're also extremely heavy. So I figure, why not add some 7 diameter wheels that just aren't super heavy? I'm surprised that they seemed resistant to this one. Are you guys gonna bring Scrap Mechanic to consoles? Short answer, not anytime soon. Are we going to get any aerial and aquatic specific parts? Thrusters work, but they're not the best for flying smoothly. We want to dedicate a future chapter for aerial and aquatic adventures, so we're saving aerodynamics and better water physics for that. Interesting. This is mainly the reason why it's not in the game yet. So this part is really, really cool. Apparently there's going to be a chapter that is dedicated to aerial and aquatic stuff, so that's going to be literally game changing. Because right now we don't have any aerodynamics, we don't have any hydrodynamics really. Thrusters are the only way to get around other than wheels on the ground. And glitches, of course. So yeah, having some underwater propellers, having some wings with lift, like that would be really, really great. But I am disappointed that they're saving it for when that chapter comes out, rather than just giving it some of these parts for creative mode, so we can actually have some fun in creative mode with new physics and new mechanics. So I'm gonna be mostly skipping the questions about modding just because I don't know anything about modding, so I really don't have any opinions on those questions. If you want to actually see the questions themselves, go ahead and check out the Q&A. But I don't have much to offer as far as commentary on that stuff, so I'm just gonna skip over them. Will we ever be able to free caged farmers for real? Well, when you free them by bringing them back to the farmer hideout, they unlock the cages behind closed doors after that, or so we hope. You know, I always knew something shady was going on when we deliver the farmers to essentially a clone of them and they disappear. I don't know. That guy in the hideout, I don't trust him. I don't trust him. Are you planning on fixing sliding wheels? When I have my car on any angle, it slides like butter on wheels. And this is an important question. This has been plaguing me in survival when I'm trying to mine rocks or harvest anything using any of my harvesting vehicles. When you're on a slope, your wheels just slide and it just makes everything so much more difficult than it has to be. So their answer is, we're not sure why wheels slide when parked on a slant. It's something we will have to investigate. We think one reason is that the wheels have a pretty low friction. This is done to make driving feel nice, but it possibly comes at the cost of the vehicle sliding around too much. We will look into that further. So this is understandable because if your wheels have too much friction, then you essentially flip over anytime you turn. Having your wheels slide against the ground actually makes it really nice when you're going fast, because when you turn, you kind of have like a more natural turning and drift feel that prevents you from digging in too hard and just flipping yourself over all the time. But as a result, when you're just trying to stay still on a slant, you just slide, and that's super annoying too. I don't know anything about game development or how hard it would be, but I feel like if wheel friction, the friction value, was actually related to how fast you were going, I feel like that would make sense to me. But oftentimes when things make sense to me, they just don't make sense from an actual development perspective, just because I don't know how to develop a game. You mentioned an exosuit in devblog 12 that gave minor perks. Was that scrapped? I like how people keep using the word scrapped because it's scrap mechanic and scrap stuff, you know. Or will it be implemented in the next chapter? Also, are there any ideas when it will come out? I don't need an exact date. The exosuit is still in our plans. However, it will look different than the concepts we've shown. It will also not be included in the next chapter, maybe the one after that. That's interesting, but it also makes sense. And all the stuff they tease for the next chapter, it seems to be heavily based on just underground and new types of drilling and mining. So the exosuit is probably going to have a whole new world of stuff opening, which makes sense that it should have its own chapter. Will we ever be able to use the indoor grow beds you have had in Scrap Mechanic Sense Creative so we can put the crops inside of our bases? Yes, we see a lot of use for indoor grow beds, so it's very likely going to be added. This is something that I forgot was even a potential option, but that is potentially game changing and maybe even almost game breaking, because part of the challenge right now is that you have to put your crops on land. They have to be directly on land. You can't have them up in the air. You can't have them out on the ocean. You always have to be attached to the actual ground, which makes it more limiting and more challenging when it comes to protecting your crops. But if you could put your crops like up above somewhere and the bots just couldn't get to it, it seems like it would get too easy almost. So I'm curious how they're going to balance that. Is there going to be spud gun customization in the future? That was the plan from the beginning, but we've had to put it on hold. We just don't see spud gun customization making a lot of sense right now. We think that the ones that are in the game do a good job with covering different types of situations, but it's not impossible that we'll bring it back later as we add new bots to fight. For this, I agree with them that there's not a lot of use, I don't think, for spud gun customization, because what we have just works. However, I think spud gun customization could kind of go the way of like creating a more personal and unique character loadout. Like if you can have different sights, you could have different color schemes. You could just change the aesthetic of your gun to make it look how you would want to look, just like you can change your character's outfits to make him look how you want to look. I think if they're going to add spud gun customization, at least give us that so we can keep making our characters unique and personal. Will you have to start a new survival world when chapter 2 comes out? And if you don't, will you be missing anything that you would get with a new world? Their answer is we really want to avoid this. We want players to be able to use their old survival worlds with the next chapter right away without missing out on anything. I don't know how this is possible, because clearly in the new chapter, there's going to be completely new biomes and tiles that didn't exist before. And if you're going to load in your old survival world and somehow not miss out on those tiles, How are they going to guarantee they don't completely break your base if you happen to build on where they want to put one of those tiles? I plan on definitely starting a new world when the chapter comes out, just because I want to be absolutely sure I get a fresh experience, but I'm really curious how they intend to avoid that. There are a bunch of exploits players use in survival that completely break the game. Are you planning to do anything about that? We are not sure what exploits you're referring to, but if the players want to exploit the game and break things because they think it's fun, then that's okay. It's their choice as long as they're having a good time. I like this answer because this isn't a competitive game. This is like a solo game or a co-op game that you play with friends, and it's like directly with friends, not strangers on the internet that can just join at any time. So when it comes to exploiting the game, I feel like nobody's exploits are going to ruin the game for anybody else, and that is like one of the only situations in which I think exploiting is perfectly fair. I personally try to avoid leaning into exploits too much just because I tend to enjoy a more natural experience of the game better, but that's just up to personal opinion, and if somebody wants to exploit it, I agree. Let them do it. Let them have fun, as long as they're not ruining it for anybody else. How will you treat automation? I saw on a dev blog a long time ago a picture where you could use vacuum pumps to move gas into a canister. I'd love to see a funnel pipe of some sort where you can shoot items into it from a vacuum pump, like the packing station. With the release of Survival Mode, we noticed that a lot of players were really enjoying the automation part of the game and wanted more. Shooting items into a container or a chest from separate creations is something that we will look into. We always wanted players to build their own automated gas stations that fill up their vehicles, for example. So this is a good observation. They did show in dev blogs long ago gas station designs that seemed to have the purpose of transferring fuel into a vehicle just by stopping by. And yeah, we don't have that in the game right now. So I was wondering what happened to that idea, but it looks like they still plan on working that in somehow, but they really haven't given any indication to how much of a priority this is in this answer. Do you plan on making a way to harvest glue in bulk, just like you did with oil? Currently, it takes quite some time to swim around and gather enough shells for your projects that you may need it for. I agree with this. That is now like the most inconvenient part is the glue clams. It is the most slow going part of the grind right now. Yes, the idea is to give players ways to automate all types of resources. Yes, we have been looking into pigment flowers and clams, for example. More on that later. So I'm glad this is kind of a blanket answer. Anything that you can collect is intended to be automated at some point, and I'm happy with that. It would be nice if you could turn on health in creative mode. We agree. It's something we should add. What kind of answer is that? They've agreed that they should add it, but made no confirmation on whether or not they're going to. I assume that this implies that they're going to add it. It's just a weird way to answer the question, in my opinion. Will there be train tracks and track pieces and train wheels? There might be, but right now there are no plans for that. However, we've seen some awesome mods that have added them. I think they should definitely consider this more seriously for survival mode, because how much easier would it be to make an automated transport system if you had train tracks and track pieces that you could lay down versus something that actually has to freely navigate the terrain? So I think that is something I hope they consider more seriously. However, there is still the weird limitation of survival where once you get out of range of your creations, they kind of don't really exist. So I don't know if you could actually make something that could travel out of your rendering distance or not. Hey, this is my question. Draggable wedges when? They said, we've gotten pretty far on draggable wedges. What we have to work out now is how they will work when you pick them up after having placed them. That is because they don't scale and work like normal blocks. We might show them in action in the next dev blog. This isn't the answer I was expecting. It makes me confused as to how they are actually making them work, because my assumption was they would scale and work like a normal block and they would be taken away like a normal block. But I guess we'll have to wait and see in the next dev blog. Why do we jump randomly while driving? This answer is more important because of reasons that you might not expect. We have to get a bit technical here. The ground is made up of a bunch of squares that are 64 by 64 meters, 256 by 256 blocks. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen, an official measurement from the devs themselves. 256 blocks equals 64 meters. So that means 1 meter is 4 blocks. So they say these squares contain 2,048 triangles. Sometimes hitting the edges of these triangles at a high speed can make the car jump. This is a technical issue that's hard to remove completely since the wheels are 100% based on physics in scrap mechanic. This is why in most racing games, the car physics are faked to make the driving smooth. So this is an interesting to note, is that having the wheels actually interact 100% physically with the ground isn't how actual like car games tend to work. And as a result, the physics end up feeling a little bit different in Scrap Mechanic. I mean, a lot different in Scrap Mechanic. Do you guys have any ideas for ocean-based bots, like an oil rig or a fishing boat? All we can say now is that one of the taupe bots will be ocean-based. So that's an odd answer. So already the taupe bot is the only one that can actually swim. And it doesn't make sense because when you look at the movements of the taupe bot in the water, it actually is kind of like a jellyfish. It seems the most naturally at place in the water when it comes to its animatronics. But this seems to indicate that they have a more specific plan for an ocean-based taupe bot than what we have right now. So I'm curious what that's going to look like. We already know that they have an explosive taupe bot planned based on a previous dev blog. Why are there no gears in the game? I think a game about mechanics should have gears. Good point. Well said. There are ways we can do gears in a pretty optimized way. It's just something we didn't prioritize. Let us know in the comments below if you think you would like us to add gears. Let's get these comments down there, people. Add some gears. I mean, just based on the sentence alone, it's like, yeah, no big deal. We could totally do it. Just, you know, I don't know if you guys really want it. It's like they're taunting us with this right here. Have you thought about adding old railroad tracks to the survival map that players can run vehicles on? Didn't we already talk about this? It would make for a fun way to get around and even make mobile bases. The next chapter might include some tracks that the players can use. Okay, well, that kind of, that is the opposite answer of the last thing that I talked about with the tracks. Thanks for considering putting tracks in survival, devs. Glad you listened to my advice from earlier in this video. Are collision damage mechanics a thing we'll see? Like driving your vehicle off a high cliff and crashing hard into the ground below will cause blocks or parts of it to disappear. Probably not with the blocks that are currently in the game. Maybe we could add a special block that would break on impact, but it's not in the plans right now. So my interpretation of that is no, it's not gonna happen. Unless it was just for creative mode, it wouldn't really make sense to add a special block that would break on impact, but have none of the current blocks be affected by that. Because then in survival, at least, why would you choose to build out of a breakable block? Unless you could actually use that as a utility, you could probably use that to build like some creation that senses impact in a way and use that to your advantage somehow. You know, it's an incomplete thought, but I could actually see some interesting possibilities to make some creative things if you can have a block that breaks on impact. When will we be able to spawn bots in challenge mode? Hopefully soon. We have this pretty much working on our end. Making your own shooters with the challenge mode editor is really fun. We definitely want to add it soon. That would be amazing for challenge mode. If you can add bots that spawn in challenge mode, there's just a whole new genre of challenges that open up. Especially if you can put health in, you need to put health in challenge mode too. Man, that would open up some possibilities if you could actually die from getting shot in challenge mode or getting hit. I mean, the obvious thing is to build a challenge with increasingly more difficult waves of bots and see how long you can last or if you can make it to the end or something. How many devs are working full-time on this game? When we released Scrap Mechanic on Steam in 2006, we were a 3-person team. Today, the Scrap Mechanic team is made up of 12 people that are working full-time, not including freelance help. So that's something important, I think, to keep in mind when you're looking at the speed of development of Scrap Mechanic, especially a game with the scope and complexity of Scrap Mechanic, is it's really not a lot of people working on it. So I do take that into consideration when I'm considering how long it's taking for updates to come out and stuff. When will you finally finish the game? So there's a really long answer, but it basically boils down to this game is really, really hard to make, and they're gonna take their time making it good. This is a pretty good question. Why do people who make mods for this game add new and interesting things much faster? Basically implying that, how come the mod makers are better at adding stuff than you are to the game? But it is a pretty valid point, so I was really curious what their answer was going to be. It's because of the awesome Scrap Mechanic community making really great mods. We, however, are a bit limited when adding things to Scrap Mechanic since everything has to fit the theme, and we have a meaning in the context of the game. We focused on bigger updates while leaving a lot of space for mod makers to be creative. I think this answer makes sense to an extent when it comes to the bigger updates and the bigger stuff that they add to the game. However, they have added like smaller things before that were just nice to have. For example, like the small pipes. We used to only have the pipes that were like the size of a full block, and then they added those smaller pipes that just added for some more variety and possibilities when building. So I think it'd be nice if they could add some more of those smaller updates that just give a few more blocks to play with, that give some possibilities. Like the draggable wedges would be nice to just have in like a mini update. Just anything like that would be nice and add more creativity into the game while having no real real impact on the larger story or anything like that. Devblog 22 when? Hopefully soon. Right now, we're waiting for things to be more presentable. We can, however, say that it will be a pretty exciting devblog. We will show underground digging for the first time. That is exciting. And you can guarantee I'll be doing a devblog review on that when it comes out. How come you've been so inactive on Twitter for the past 2 months? I mean, to be honest, I don't think the past 2 months is really that unique compared to the past 5 years. But usually when we go silent, it means that we're pretty busy with internal deadlines, but we'll take it to heart and try to post more during these times. I mean, I don't really blame them for this. Whenever they post little teasers of stuff, they always get a flood of people who aren't happy with the teaser, or they want other things for the game, and they're just not happy with the development of the game. So honestly, I probably wouldn't want to post to Twitter that much either if I had to deal with that much negativity every single time. Might as well just focus on making the game good. But as a player of the game and a content creator on the game especially, having more regular communication would be very useful for me. I'm always excited and happy to see when they tease new stuff and they show what they're working on, even if it's like small details that aren't the major things that everyone really cares about. Why are you guys so slow with updates compared to most games today? Development used to be very slow before the survival release, but today our tools are a lot better and our development is going pretty fast. However, it's hard to see that from the outside since the community does not see the number of things we are working on. Hopefully, the devlogs will start to make that clearer. I think this is an important answer to think about. I have to remember that these are human beings with lives outside of Scrap Mechanic, and this is their day job. There aren't a whole lot of them working on this game, and it's obvious to me with how massive the survival update was and how almost entirely different of a game we saw with survival compared to pre-survival. It's pretty obvious to me that they are working hard on it, and I don't know why I would expect them not to be continuing working just as hard on it now. I'm sure there are a ton of complexities and layers and roadblocks that they encounter with the developments that we're just never gonna see because that's just happening on a day-to-day basis all the time. So as long as they're doing whatever they need to do to keep consistent progress behind the scenes while also maintaining a healthy work-life balance, then that's all we can ask for, really. And boy, that was actually a lot more to go over than I expected it to be. This is probably gonna end up being a pretty long video, and I'll probably cut out some questions that just weren't really that interesting in my opinion. But I will leave a link to this Q&A down in the description below if you hadn't read it yet and you want to see it in its full detail that I didn't include in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A review, I guess we can call it. And let me know what you think, if you agree or disagree with any of my reactions or opinions on these questions and answers. And let me know what you're most excited for after seeing this Q&A. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you'll probably enjoy some other stuff on the channel that you can see on the end screen right here. Hope this video has earned your subscription. Anyway, this has been ScrapMan, and I'll see you next time. Bye.